In a previous assignment, you were solving polynomials by finding their zeros, that is, their x-intercepts. In this case, we're doing something very similar, except we aren't finding the zeros. Notice this particular problem says that we should be solving f of x equals 6. And of course, we have the f of x graph shown up above. And so we need to be able to figure out what x is from this. Well, remember that f of x is basically just a big fancy name for y. So really what this problem is saying is that if y equals 6, what does x equal? That's what this question is really asking. And so if I go up to where y equals 6, and I look all the way across on that, and yes, I do want to take a look at both sides, I can see that there's actually two different places where my graph hits 6. On the left-hand side here, I can see that it's happening at -9. And on the right-hand side here, it is happening at a +9. It happens to be -9 and 9. That certainly will not always be the case that they're opposites of each other, but it can be. And so I would just say that my answers here are -9 and 9. For my next problem, it's going to be very much the same idea. Now, you might be looking at the graph and saying, yeah, but part of the graph is missing. I can't see that up there. Okay, yeah, so what's that change? Well, in this particular problem, I'm looking to see when f of x equals 5, which means y equals 5. So actually, all I care about is where the graph hits that line up at 5. So I don't care what's happening above 10. In fact, I don't care about any of the rest of it except for what's happening at these 3 points. In this case, there just happens to be 3 of them. And so then I'm just going to list out those x values of each of those points where my graph crosses that line. Notice I'm only including the x values because I already know what the y's are because we were told f of x equals 5. I'm figuring out what the x's are. Then one more problem of the same kind of vibe, very different looking graph. In this case, f of x equals -4. So I'm looking to see where the graph crosses the line where y equals -4. And you notice that there's actually quite a few of the points here. And so we're going to need to really dig in and take a look at that carefully. And I'm even going to erase the dotted line right there because I want to make it a little bit easier to see what's going on around that point there. Okay, so I'm looking for my zeros. I see that I got 1 0 right here. That's at -8. Okay, that's pretty easy. Then I have another 0 right here. That's at -5. But then from there, I see one there at -3 and right next to it there at -2. When they're very close together like that, sometimes they can be hard to distinguish that those are separate zeros, but do look very closely at those. You can even zoom in on the graph using the little magnifying glass tool if it's a little bit hard to tell. And then finally, we also will have one more 0 here at 2. And so I'd then list those out as my answers. And in this case, that means I happen to list 5 different answers out because we happen to have 5 different points where our line actually crosses, or where our curve crosses the line y equals -4.